In July 1895, inside a suffocating, foul-smelling cellar in Toronto, Philadelphia detective Frank Geyer is digging through the dirt. 3 feet down, his shovel hits something solid. He brushes away the damp earth to uncover a large wooden trunk. Inside are the heavily decomposed remains of 2 young girls, Alice and Nellie Pitezel, who had been locked inside and asphyxiated with a gas hose. The scene Geyer uncovered was marked by a chilling, mechanical detachment. The killer had operated with a cold precision that suggested these deaths were part of a larger, pre-planned sequence. To solve this case, Geyer would have to look past the physical horror and reconstruct a bloody financial ledger stretching back years. 2 years earlier, the 1893 World's Fair turned Chicago into a global destination. Millions of visitors and anonymous, vulnerable young workers flooded the city, creating a perfect environment for a predator to blend in. Waiting in the suburb of Inglewood was a wealthy, charismatic figure who called himself Dr. Henry Howard Holmes. Tabloid myths have long described Holmes's Chicago residence as a murder castle, a theatrical house of horrors filled with soundproof torture chambers and dead-end staircases. The forensic reality was far more pragmatic. Holmes designed his building's confusing layout to evade creditors, and he methodically selected his victims to secure property deeds and lucrative life insurance payouts. Holmes commodified human life for profit, utilizing his business acumen to turn murder into a series of calculated financial entries. When the World's Fair ended, Chicago sank into a severe depression. Holmes found himself heavily indebted and desperate for a massive infusion of cash to stay ahead of his creditors. He plotted with his longtime associate, Benjamin Pitezel, to secure a $10,000 insurance payout. The plan was to fake Pitezel's death using a stolen medical cadaver and stage an accidental explosion in Philadelphia. But Holmes made a ruthless calculation. Acquiring a convincing cadaver was expensive and difficult, so he murdered Pitezel himself to ensure he could keep the entire payout for himself. This pivot to murder would be his undoing. By killing his own partner, Holmes violated the logic of his own criminal system and left a trail of evidence he couldn't hide. To collect the money, Holmes convinced Pitezel's widow, Terry, that her husband was actually in hiding. Under the pretense of reuniting them, he took custody of 3 of her children. For weeks, Holmes kept the mother and children in parallel transit. He moved them from city to city, strictly separated, unaware they were often blocks apart. The children wrote desperate letters home. Holmes intercepted every one, keeping the unmailed envelopes in his possession. The scheme finally unraveled when an angry former cellmate informed authorities about the scam. In November 1894, Pinkerton detectives finally apprehended Holmes in Boston. When Detective Frank Geyer took over the investigation, he found the hidden letters. He used them as a geographical roadmap, tracing the killer's steps through the very boarding houses where the children were last seen. It is a supreme irony that a man who meticulously erased human beings was ultimately trapped because he failed to destroy their paperwork. Following the trail, Geyer arrived at a rental house in Irvington, Indiana, searching for the final missing child, 7-year-old Howard. He discovered a chilling clue at a local repair shop, where a charismatic man had recently paid to have a set of surgical knives sharpened. Inside the rental home's large iron stove, Geyer sifted through the ash and found charred bone fragments and the distinctive teeth of the young boy. This discovery shattered Holmes's facade. He could no longer present himself as a refined businessman once the brutal reality of his crimes was exposed to the public. The subsequent media frenzy turned Holmes into a celebrity. Hearst newspapers paid him a fortune to write a confession where he claimed to have murdered over 100 people, most of whom were later found alive. In 1896, Holmes was executed by hanging. His death was slow and agonizing. His neck failed to snap, and he strangled for 15 minutes before being pronounced dead. Society often prefers to believe that monsters look like supernatural villains hiding in theatrical castles. It's a way to avoid the reality of how these predators actually function. Ultimately, the legacy of H.H. Holmes is one of pure banality. He operated as a pharmacist and a businessman who quantified human life strictly as a commodity.